And boy, did I fight it. Believing in my new thought concepts even when they don't feel or look like they're working. You know, Lois says it all the time. A lot of people in here on the spiritual path say it. See past appearances, right? DJ says it all the time. See past the appearance of what's going on today. We're perfect. We're 100% perfect in potential form, and we have at our disposal anytime the ability to tap into that. It's true. I am a child of the Most High, made in the image and likeness of God. I have inside me the God traits that are forever pushing me to my greater good, my best self, the full expression of God in divine form, right here, as I am. I do not believe in any opposing force to the divine. Therefore, I could admit and own that everything that was happening, no matter how painful and intense for me, was somehow for my greater good and somehow for the greater good of those people I would serve. It had to be. It had to have God in it, because we say all the time, God is everywhere. There is no place that God is not. I understood there was a plan for my life, and God's timing is perfect. Everything happens for a reason. These periods of desolation and consolation, by the way, are made to pass, and pass they will. And good will certainly come of it. It's been my experience. For me, and for all of you, should you find yourself in a similar place. That's the way that life is set up. That's the way it works. It doesn't come to stay, it comes to pass. And what is permanent? God's love. The God within, the God without. God never leaves us or forsakes us. So even when I feel that God is far away, I can trust that I'm being guided. That's what I know. All is well, and intense beauty is about to manifest in rainbow colors always. That's how it works. Don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle, the change, the manifestation. So what have I learned, and why is spiritual desolation such a gift, as I claim? I learned to sit quiet with these feelings, all of them, the ones I deem easy and the ones I deem hard, and that I would survive. I learned that through this time of developing a closer relationship with God, that was less self-reliance, more God-reliance, I learned there was another way, a more useful way. And you say, well, we know this. We hear this all the time. I knew it too. But I didn't know it up against the overpowering tidal wave of feelings, the likes of which I've never felt before. I've always felt a little bit of them. But then I would do this, I would journal, I would pray, I would and it took me out. But not this time. And I really thought that there was no, after days and days and days and weeks and months of it, I really thought there was no possible way to come up from there. I learned it does not serve me to try to control my circumstances, that I can give that up to my higher self, God. I strengthened my resolve and new thought concepts. As a man thinketh, so is he. And you can do that even when you don't feel it. I'm glad you didn't think that was just a lisp. I learned to rest in God. I learned to be less focused on self and more focused on the needs of those around me. Service. Service, a concept I've been hearing about in the 12-Step Fellowship for over 20-something years. Serving others, that's the key. It is impossible, I say, try it if you will, to feel depressed while focused and being other-directed. And the top of mind question starts to be, how can I help? I work to help God's children, and God has to support me. It's not a question. If I'm doing God's will, I can be sure I am supported by God in those efforts, period. God and I have become even tighter than before, which is the objective of my life, to draw nearer to God. It's my real vocation. It's my real purpose. What's your divine purpose, Claude? Serve God. That's it, serve God. I don't care what it looks like anymore. I don't. I have faith that I'll be shown. What a team, my 1% and God's 99. I learned to rest in God, my new favorite phrase. Accept the circumstances in these times as being perfect, divine timing and appointment. Nothing to do or change, nothing to try to control. I learned that I stunk at living in the present moment and practicing mindfulness. Really, really bad at that. Never really realized how bad I was. Always thinking ahead. And when not thinking ahead, which was most of the time thinking about the past. I understand these are tools I will need to use to serve God better. Too much focus was on the physical, the material, the temporal parts of life. What matters? God, serving God, knowing God, loving God. Each one of us will do that differently, but a life lived mostly for oneself brings very little peace and happiness. And serving only when it fits my schedule or when it was convenient did not work for me. I learned about a deeper level of giving, face-to-face and in prayer for others. I learned how much I judged people. This period softened my heart. I learned God's plan is perfect, and I can trust it all the time. So summing this all up, I told you I didn't understand its cause, this period of spiritual desolation and depression and anxiety, but I do recognize some of the gifts. And I believe there will be even more. One, I received the gift of redirection. Ever get really happy when you pray for something and you don't get what you want? No? Redirection is God's protection. You could say, we can write some redirection is God's protection. Move away from the old to welcome the new. More service, less Claude focus, more focus outside myself, and how can I get to how might I give? My faith increased, and I think this really was the biggest gift, as did my closeness with God. God is in complete control. May I show up as my higher self today. I experienced higher levels and deeper levels of God consciousness and spiritual evolution, which I believe can be assistance to those I serve in life at RISM, the center in Rhode Island, as a minister and a spiritual songwriter. I learned to wait. Wait. Do you know, I've recognized something through this period that I want to move so much that even when I'm sitting down, you'll see me, you know, my knees bouncing. I used to think it was because I was, you know, rhythmical. I just think the body was so conditioned to move in sports, in music, in life, fast, quick, run. Patience, rest in God, be at peace. And one of my favorite phrases, am I leaving room for God to work? Am I leaving room? If you imagine your life as 100 cubicles or little boxes in a day, how many of those boxes are filled up with God? How many? 1%, 10%? Not a lot for me sometimes. I don't realize how much I want to control and take the bull by the horns. The plan is perfect. And I know I would not have learned this lesson to this degree if I hadn't had this period of tribulation. There's no doubt about that. And I say be careful what you pray for. Because once I knew I wanted to be a minister, I started to study the lives of the saints and the lives of those. As a matter of fact, I went to hear Bernie Siegel. And I don't know if you know who Bernie Siegel is, but he's, you know, Medicine and Miracles. He writes so many, he's a doctor from Connecticut. He writes so many fantastic and inspiring books. And he said, you know what, he tells us, this was just 2 months ago maybe, in the convention center in Rhode Island. He said, you know, I was at one of these conventions with all these big hoity-toity inspirational speakers. And you could imagine, he didn't say, but I can imagine Wayne Dyer and Ayama Van Zandt and a bunch of them who I love and read and really have learned from. And he said, we had a break and each one of them sat at the table and talked about how suicidal and depressed they were. And Bernie said, you're here to inspire these people. You're suicidal? Wow. He said, I've never felt that way. And they said, oh, Bernie, you'll get there. And Bernie opens up the conference talking about, you know, how somebody asked him, how are you? And how conditioned we are. He said, oh, fine. And he said, you know what? My doctor's out of the office, and I ran out of my antidepressant, so I'm not doing that well today. And he filled me. I'm telling you, he captivated